Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I want to talk about an aspect of comic storytelling that I think has really gotten very rare. And a lot of it, in many cases, it's because comics aren't really told this way anymore. And if there's any kind of earth-shaking big development that's going to happen inside of a comic book, the publishers I think are very concerned that due to the lower sales and the desperate need to drive any kind of attention onto the book, that they will spoil the surprise in the hopes that they can get speculator cash because they do not trust the idea that comics are going to, if the surprise rolls out naturally, that will bring more of an audience by itself. It's kind of the difference between big, quick term money or long term money. If you roll out a surprise in a book, and recently, I think the big one was Elektra becoming Daredevil. Marvel didn't hype that. Like it wasn't an Atlantic story, USA Today story, or and there's lots of cases where they're getting press for surprises. But they let that one go, whether it was an oversight or no one was paying attention to Daredevil or an editor wasn't doing their job or who knows, for whatever reason, that one didn't get out there. And I remember some very direct commentary from Marvel afterward, because what happened is the news leaked, a day or two before the comic, not through news press, but through comics kind of boards and other places. And then the comic sold out in the stores. And retailers, they were ordering Daredevil, but they weren't ordering huge on Daredevil. And so it had the effect of basically making a more valuable comic. Got bought up. They went back to a reprinting, which is fine. But at the time, Marvel was grumbling about it, saying basically they would have sold a lot more comics if they had, promoted it ahead of time, done some press releases about it, gotten the word out. The challenge with that logic is that what happens when you basically teach your customers, your readers, that surprises can happen when you least expect them. That when you teach your readers that, they tend to buy more comics. They tend to be more religious about coming in and buying runs. They don't want to miss out on a surprise. They don't want to miss an issue and then turns out it's really important and it sells out and then they have to pay more if they want to get it or any of that kind of stuff. They want to be there for the event, the moment, not the event, but the moment. And the from the comic perspective, that from the publisher perspective, that organic, a surprise happens, people don't know, the comic book goes up in value, it becomes scarce, and everything else. They view that as all money they don't get, which is true. They get the initial order from the retailer, they do get to do a second printing, and that's more money, and that's good, but that's not going to sell as well as first. And the person who gets the extra money is a retailer. What the publisher forgets is that if you present the idea that anything could happen, don't miss it, people will buy more comics overall. Both the retailer will buy more because they also don't want to sell out, and the customers will buy more. But if you train your market and your audience to basically, if there's ever going to be a surprise or a big moment, don't worry about it. We'll tell you a couple weeks in advance through USA Today or through a news channel. What that does is it tells people, well, this isn't going to raise up as much in terms of money, so the speculator cash isn't going to be there, and it'll probably be ordered high, so I don't need to really hustle to get it. And if I do want this big moment, I can go in and buy it, but I'll buy it as a one-off. I won't subscribe to a run. I won't get comics in my pull box. I'll just go in and get this particular issue, or I'll call my comic shop and say, would you put that issue in my box? And I can be more selective, basically, with what I'm purchasing. So the publisher gets kind of immediate bumps in these moments, but they don't get the long-term benefit of the surprise. And to me, taking the business aspect out of it, the surprise is one of the best parts of comics. I've used this analogy before of one of the things I like best about comics is when it's a little bit like a magic trick. And the magic trick in this case is kind of the classic misdirection. It's where the comic writer is clever enough, smart enough about what they're doing, that they lead you down a certain path. You know how the story's going to go because the beats seem familiar, and that we're basically teasing you by revealing a few things over here as red herrings. And like a classic example is when there's a kind of a secret identity about to be revealed, or when there's somebody who's backstabbing Spider-Man this month, or what. Not quite like that, but anyway, they basically create this illusion that some of the other characters are acting dodgy, have something to hide, there's a mystery there. But then the true answer comes out of nowhere from the side because they've done a good job of misdirecting where your attention goes. Now, the art of misdirection can be done very poorly. I think Matt Fraction had done a little bit of it in when he was doing X-Men, and even that Iron Man story where he lost his memory and he was kind of backing it up on hard drives or whatever, and they were doing some of this misdirection. But the place the answer has to go to needs to make sense. It can't just be a complete out of nowhere misdirection, or then you kind of break the trust between the reader and the writer. But if you're able to pull off a surprise, and surprises don't have to be huge, they can be small, and it can be as simple as this character, we are leading you down the path to believe that this character was going to be ambushed by the villain in this way, but as it turned out, a different villain came in and took over instead. I mean, these kinds of moments hook readers, they drive engagement. Surprises are probably the number one reason why any kind of media, which, by the way, everything I'm saying right now is true for wrestling as well. One of the reasons that wrestling's numbers are down is that the WWE has that same kind of lack of confidence in itself at the moment, where they will intentionally kind of spoil the surprise because they're afraid that if we just roll this out there, we'll miss viewers, and we're basically looking very myopically at week by week ratings. And so if we can bring the numbers up, zero point 0.2 this week, that's a win, and a better win for us right now than potentially missing out on that raise, but getting a lot of buzz the next day, having people look at stuff on YouTube where you don't make the same kind of money, and then maybe or maybe not tuning in the same week. It's a classic short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And to be fair, in comics, when you have writers that are given 6-month contracts, or that they're basically, they have no longevity, they have no commitment at all, then how are they supposed to come up with long storylines? They can't, and they don't. But when they're able to pull it off, to me, that is the most magical aspect of comic storytelling. That is my favorite storyline, is when they're able to pull off a truly true surprise, something that you truly do not see coming, something that maybe you knew exactly. And for a lot of people, by the way, who read comics a lot, we all get we're smarts, we're smarks in the wrestling terminology. We all believe we've read it all. We know how these stories go. We know what these characters are all about. We know what's going to happen. We've seen this song and dance before, and there's nothing you can do to surprise us. We have this feeling that we know. But when you're able to pull the rug out from her, when you're able to use that ability, you're able to tease people with their knowledge and then swerve. You thought the rock was in this hand, but it turns out it was somewhere else all along. That's the magic trick. And to me, that's one of my favorite parts of comics, is when they're able to pull off that magic trick. And again, this is where one of the ills of the industry, I think, that really gets showcased is basically this, that you don't have confidence that people are organically going to start collecting and reading your comic. So you spoil it in order to get a short-term bump, but then you train your audience to always expect the spoiler or the announcement. You take money out of your pocket long-term, and you basically ruin the element of surprise. How many great storylines, if you can think about it, over the last several years have been ruined by this? Look at the promotional tour that DC did around Tom Taylor and making John Kent gay or bisexual. Imagine, if you will, if that had just rolled out in the comic. It would have completely shaken up everything. People, whether they like it or dislike it, more people would have been buying that comic because it would have signaled that huge moments can happen when you least expect them. And that is a good thing for comics. If you're writing comics right now, do some major things. Do some misdirection. Give people some genuine surprises. But for the love of God, publishers, stop spoiling it. Have confidence in your product. When you spoil things, that's what it comes across. It comes across like somebody who doesn't feel confident in their own comic, in their own story. And that's the most depressing thing of all. But I love surprises. So how about you? What are some of your favorite elements of comics? Do you love surprises like I do? Do you wish there were more of them? More true shock moments? That's what I like. Now I'm going to have to go look around for some listicles of shock moments in comics that I will disagree with. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.